Remnants and Labyrinth Derelict Abyss. Yeah, we got a spacey Double Trouble special. Been a bit since I last did something like this. Remnants and Labyrinth Derelict Abyss were released by game dev musician pixel artist June Flower. Both games were released in 2020. I look at these games today because I think that they are an interesting experience, but I found myself challenged to put those experiences into words. In case for Remnants, I find it to be a shining example of distinctness, and how games that strive towards realistic graphics will never be able to utilize the single thing that makes the medium of video games special: the ability to explore these unique and alien worlds, to be able to escape. So let's begin with Remnants. Absolutely adore the logo for this game. Beautiful. Remnants is a game made for the ZX Spectre. I know y'all are rummaging around the house like, hey, do I got one of those? But it's a parody name for the ZX Spectrum, an 8-bit Euro computer from the 1980s. One of the most standout things that's still remembered from games on the ZX Spectrum, that's a good name by the way, I'm gonna keep saying it, are the graphics of them. People love to make retro games in the style of, 8-bit Nintendo games that we're so used to seeing, yet so rarely do we see ones that take the style produced from the ZX Spectrum, the distinct black shading, the color clashing, the bright single colors to make up entities. It's also very interesting to me. I recommend looking some of this stuff up. It's so very fascinating all the reasons games ended up looking how they had to. It wasn't as much as a choice. I mean, if the devs back then could choose at the time, they likely would go for the modern graphics we see today. But what was created here in these earlier games represents that retro style that defines how video games look to me. How they can create such a distinguished, unique, beautiful world. And it's why I love Remnants. I can't say if it really captures or follows the rules of the ZX Spectrum, rather than just be inspired by its essence. But to be fair, this is a ZX Spectre game, not ZX Spectrum, so it could be true to that. The game begins with our unnamed protagonist in a forest, completely shadowed out, the player relying on the blue grass scattered across the ground to help find themselves. We find this door in the ground, with the protagonist confirming that this is what they're here for, and this excellent shot of them opening and entering. This game has quite a few cutscenes like this, and it's very cool. The game takes place on several floors, known as layers. Entering, we can now see the protagonist, a robed gamer with that glowy-eyed look I love. The menu icon being this rather abstract design, really adding to their mystery of what they are and what they're representative of. And from here on out, our mission is to simply explore and take in the environment. And these environments are so incredible. Every room has its own flavor, its own color, its own story, even its own name. It all adds together. Disturbing ones that changes even the character's palette, evoke religious imagery. It's that feeling of exploring an area lost to centuries that I absolutely love in games. Imagining the people once here, the story of this world, it's enthralling. I like how despite how creepy and dark the imagery gets, I always felt safe. Terrible things happened here, but it's past now. And I exist as an explorer to document in my mind the occurrences here alone. I am the aftermath. When compared to other top-down exploration games, this is some of the most detailed in terms of interaction. Nearly everything in this world can be examined. There are more tiles on these maps with dialogue tied to them than ones without. The dialogue itself being from the perspective of the main character, giving them a sort of personality that the player can interpret. I feel like they're an overconfident person going in over their head, fascinated by all these concepts, some which are alien to them but normal to us, and has some knowledge on it all as well. I really enjoyed hearing their thoughts and explanations on everything in a room, from the small objects on the ground to the paintings etched into the walls. Every one of these rooms are areas I could just stay in forever. This is further supported by the absolutely stellar soundtrack. Very ambient, dark, yet chill, sort of relaxing and curious, alien music. Mostly made by the creator, with a couple tracks involving a certain Jack King Spooner some of y'all might recognize. This music really adds to the mysteriousness of the area we're in and the world. It's what ties together that feeling of being teleported into another place. That kind of experience that so few games could give. A game where the player doesn't really know the goal. It's to just exist and take it in. It's fantastic. I will complain that this environment does get a bit shattered by the very few sound effects in this game regarding picking up items or opening the menu. They're a bit too loud compared to everything else, but maybe there's something to appreciate about that as well. How sudden and shocking it is to open the menu, like a glass shattering snap. This game is such a compact package, filled with a ton of value for every room and moment, which may make it rather unsurprising and sad that it took me about 30 minutes to complete. It's a very short game, but golly, is there like nothing I've played like it. It's such a good 30 minutes. One of those few instances where I can say the best part of the game was the entire game. Very cool experience. Kind of wonder how much I'd enjoy a game like this that would just go on forever. If this would ever get tiring. Maybe it being 30 minutes is that perfect length. I'll go more into detail on what I thought about certain story aspects of Remnants later, because I do have a lot of similar thoughts to it as I do with the next game by the same creator, released like 5 months later, is Labyrinth Derelict Abyss. Upon starting the game, we are told that we are formed, giving us a vague indication that we're on a mission. We play the role of an avatar of ambiguity to fit anyone. The game itself retains a very striking color theme to it. Areas are separated by dominant colors on screens, leaving the remnants of ZX style behind. We got something that I still really enjoy. The goal of this game is a bit unknown at first, but through exploration we learn of these relics we must collect, containing the soul or spirit of these random characters. There are 12 of them in total that can be found within these colored zones. Some of them are rather easy to find, while others lie cheekily within wall secrets. There is a hint system the player can use, but I'm too gamer excellent for that, and found them all on my own rather quickly. I do quite enjoy the non-linearity of the game, being possible to get any relic in any order, with still these visually great areas. I thought the part where the player turns into a worm-like creature to climb across vines and a fish to scale the water was quite interesting, and the music is still quite great. Yet despite my deciding to put these two in the same video, I believe that Labyrinth Derelict Abyss stands close yet opposite to what I loved about Remnants. While exploration is the theme, it's more the exploration of areas than individual rooms. Going from the slow-paced walking around and examining of Remnants, we now play a character who is fast, rushing through these scenes of art. At points I had to stop just to appreciate them before moving on, as if the pace of the game encourages us to not want to gaze upon this art, complementing the stark differences. As the game says in its instructions, it is only possible to interact with the 12 relics. There is no examining the world around us, leaving us in the dark to now come up to our own conclusions upon the areas we visit. I also feel like the tone of these two games now become more apparent. Remnants had bits of jokey dialogue here and there, which while could be odd, I'd sum it up to the character I was controlling. Yet here, we see more of the quirkiness show appearance with the dialogues and names of these relics. They exist to really twist the mood. I suppose this humor doesn't entirely land with me, and not to say I dislike these characters. I mean, most of them only have like 1 to 3 lines of dialogue, and I did find some to be interesting. I mean, I could have gone without the jump scare rabbit, but I do like the idea of it and its placement, feeling as if we broke the game. It's very sudden. It's just that when I think about these games overall, and the potential meaning of the worlds to be interpreted, these goofy characters sort of clash with how serious I should take it. But maybe it's this clashing that aids in the alien-like feeling of the world. There's always another side to points, I suppose. I will say I thought the ending was pretty cool. Not showing it, of course, but I think it rocks. Some of y'all might be feeling like I kinda sped through talking about this game. And well, I suppose I didn't mention this, but this game took me about 15 minutes. Though recollection, there's probably more areas to explore in this game, as I did spend longer per room in Remnants examining everything. I suppose it's a question of which one finds value in. They're very different, yet so similar, which is why I wanted to include them together. Also because this video would be too short if I did them separately. But let's wrap this up. Remnants and Labyrinth Derelict Abyss, specifically Remnants in my opinion, are a good example of the games that you really have to hunt for. The games that really capture the art of video games to me. Maybe when most people think of games, they think of high graphics, intense action, deep strategy, and gameplay. But sometimes, I think far opposite. That these are games to me. The pieces of media that can extract me into these colorful, unique worlds. Environments farthest from anything I'd see in the world I currently reside in. This is what I find to be intriguing, magical about games. As for my personal thoughts on the stories and meanings behind these games, I don't have much to fill in that area. I personally don't see any sort of deep meaning that was intentional with these games. Rather, Remnants and Labyrinth Derelict Abyss exist as art galleries, every room being a piece of art for me to explore, with a game and characters to tie it together. Sometimes that tie being a tad loose. The mood these games give is the experience that some games take hours to accomplish. For as short and simple as these games really are, they create a remarkable well of soul that exists neither fully in the game or ourselves, yet both. I suppose how much extra value that is created here beyond the scope and actual content of the game is dependent on the player and their enjoyment of the experience. In my case, I thought these games were pretty darn neat, and I know I'm probably not going to play anything like them in a while. Another new flavor of a game, a unique shade to the painting. Games truly are infinite. Links in the description if y'all want to try these games out, alongside ones I didn't mention. I think they're well worth the experience of something I found to be decently refreshing, a pretty cool side of video games. Remnants and Labyrinth Derelict Abyss. Nostalgic, beautiful, magical. Huge thanks to my Golly Gamer tier supporters, Ken Chiago and Celtris, and a big thanks to everyone else who has been donating and supporting me on Ko-Fi.